Hey there everyone, this is Jeremy, the Music Andy, and today we're here to talk about Motomami from Rosalia. Studio album number 3 coming from Spain for Rosalia. The previous 2 albums received high remarks, the first one being a more avant folk, chamber folk approach from Rosalia, the second being a more art pop, alternative R&B album. Obviously, going into this, there's going to be a bit of a language barrier between me and Rosalia, but I don't feel like that's really going to impact me too much with the music. I can still appreciate this vocally from a melody standpoint, from a way that the vocals are approached and presented, maybe sampled, affected. And then I can also dive into the instrumentation, how they're done. Are they more progressive? Are they more linear? Is it a dynamic album? Is it just kind of more of a compressed album? What is the tones going on? What are these samples? How are these instruments being played and layered? Sayoko is the opening track on this one, and it is an immediate banger. This one was a single. I didn't get to hear it as a single, but it is very gritty. It's very grimy. It has that Nero Para style to it. If the album was approached like this the entire way through, I would be head over heels for this album. I get a lot of energy from this. The instrumentation on here is super interesting. It's super engaging. The way that Rosalia is presenting this vocally with different ways that it's being sampled, affected, and just played around with her voice, it's very fun, engaging listen. And then you have a very overwhelming kind of boiling ending to it. And then in the midway section, there's a little jazz freak out section in there. And I mean, that's just a recipe for an absolute banger. Great track. Then moving on to the track Candy, there is an immediate change in attitude, in emotion. Candy has done it in a lot more of an alternative R&B, ambient pop style. And for the most part, this is kind of how the album's going to play out. There's going to be 2 faces to this. You're going to have the more energetic, club-focused tracks that are very gritty, they're very dynamic, they're very progressive, kind of in your face. And then you're going to have the more kind of laid-back, ambient, alternative R&B tracks. A little bit more contained, linear in sound, but there are tracks that are very noteworthy, that are very standout-ish, and they are done in a more progressive way and very layered and very rich. The only thing that I don't like about this is some of the track placements on this kind of make it a little bit of a weird listen when you go all the way through. 1 second I have enough energy to do a standing front flip, and then the next second somebody's chopping onions next to me and I'm just tearing up. And not only is the tracking weird on this, at least for me, but also just the way that these songs are kind of presented. Some of them, like I was saying, are very progressive. They're very engaging. They're kind of challenging you as a listener. They're throwing everything at you. They're being very experimental with tones, introducing new ways and trying to, push music forward and giving a very unique listen to it. And then some of the other songs are a bit more formulated. They're a bit more run-of-the-mill. And not saying that they're done in a bad way necessarily, because there's nothing wrong with those fun songs and those run-of-the-mill songs, and you just put a song on and you feel good. But what this album's trying to do, as far as a theme and a concept way, it is going in a much more artful approach. It has moments of being very layered, like I said, being very rich on your ear, using tones that are unique to each track. And it should have just kept running with that if that's going to be the idea that it wanted to be for. Having those kind of more filler songs that just feel like any artist could make, it kind of makes it a little bit of a less listen for me. Sayoko to La Fama is a very hot start to this album. La Fama not being a track that I'm 100% in love with. The Weeknd being on it is a little bit strange, but he does have some very nice vocals, and they kind of do pair well with Rosalia's. But then we move on to the track Chicken Teriyaki, and the 2 tracks in between that, it just doesn't work for me. The rhythm and melody that was going on with Chicken Teriyaki kind of had me fearful going forward with this album. I didn't know if we were going to just kind of give up after the first 3, even though, again, like I was saying, La Fama is a much more reserved track. It is more of a radio-friendly track, but it's still done in a very well way. Chicken Teriyaki just kind of had that repetitive beat. And when you're using repetitive beats, there's nothing wrong with that. But if it's not an initial interesting grabbing beat, or it never progresses to become an interesting beat, then you're just kind of lost in that track, and that's kind of how I felt. Hentai completely rocked me when I first listened to it. It started off as a very soft listen, but then it has an immediate left turn and just kind of punches you in the face. It started off so serene, so peaceful, and then it just becomes very aggressive. But even after this initial aggression, you do find that serene and peacefulness, and this song really kind of combines together. And there's very contrasting points with the vocals and the instrumentation that's going on, but they do work together very well. The next two tracks on this one do have moments of being standoutish. They kind of have their own unique sound, but still they are very enjoyable songs for me to listen to. They don't have anything really making them stand out too much. The track Genius has some very nice hyperpop vocals on it, and the vocals are played with in a very nice way. It's very fun, it's very catching on the ear, but the instrumentation's a little bit too reserved to really kind of balance out between the vocals being elevated and the instrumentation being low. They're just not, the vocals aren't carrying it enough to make it a very interesting track for me to listen to. Moving on to the back end half of this one, I only really have 3 tracks I'm like very deeply attached to on this one out of the 8 tracks that are given. Those tracks being Motomami, Diablo, and Cute. And somebody please correct me if I'm wrong, but on the track Cute, there's a sample being put on it, and I want to know if it's the TikTok of the guy singing the 1, 2, 3, 4 to Be Nice to Me. These tracks kind of continue that club feel, that more energetic feel that the album was kind of giving me at the beginning, and little sprinkles, but it's also infusing that more pop approach and constantly switching vocally, tempo switches, very dynamic, very layered music. It's very evolving. It's always constantly keeping you on your toes. And the thing that I really want to point out again is that dynamic balance that these songs have. The volume slider is constantly moving up and down like a mountain. It's engaging, it's very challenging as a listener, and it really creates these very unique moments to the tracks and those payoffs. And the other 5 tracks that are kind of on this back half really don't have that for me. Sakura is the final track on this one, and it is a song that is well put together. It is very well produced. It's doing its ambient pop thing, and it's doing it well. Things are nicely layered, it's nicely paced throughout it, it's very engaging as a listen, but for some reason I just don't connect with this one, and I wish that I did, because it is well put together, it's got good sounds, the melody's fine, but I don't know, I got no explanation on that one. Maybe it's the fact that it is a little bit more repetitive and it's done in that more ambient drone way, and typically I do like ambient and drone. Maybe it's the combination of the ambient and the pop that I don't like. I can't explain it. Maybe I'll come back to this album in about 4-6 months and I think that it's absolutely fantastic, and I'll start elevating a lot more of the other tracks. One thing I feel like I haven't explained enough on this one is that Rosalia's vocals are fantastic all the way throughout this album. Some of the melodies are a little bit more simple, standard pop songs, but the way that she sings, the way that the vocals are manipulated, affected, skewed, contorted, it just works so well with her vocals, and it works well paired with the instrumentation that's going on here, and it almost elevates a lot of the tracks, but some of the instrumentation makes it so that these tracks can't get, elevated. Overall, I do think that this is a solid album. I think that it has a lot of flavors and shades, giving it a very robust listen to it. Do songs hit better than other ones? For me, yes, but for other people, they just might absolutely love this album, and from what I'm seeing on this, a lot of people do feel that way, and that's absolutely fantastic. I wish that the track listing was a little bit different. I'm not going to say better, because who am I to say what is better? I just wish that it was presented in a different way, or obviously if I got to place the tracks how I wanted to do it, then I would do that. But all that considered, I'm going to give this 7.2 gas tanks out of 10. What did you think of this album? What albums would you like for me to review in the future? Please leave a comment below and let me know. Subscribe if you like the content, and I hope that you have a wonderful day. Thank you.